Well, guys, that's it. You know what, guys? I have not been that attached to this show, and that was honestly one of the most sad. That was one of the saddest finales and most satisfying finales I have ever seen. And I wasn't even that attached to the show. And guys, this is gonna be our review for the series finale of Sons of Anarchy, season 7, episode 13, Papa's Goods. And I honestly did not know what to think of this episode. I kept thinking, what is this episode gonna do? Is this episode gonna be satisfying? Is this episode gonna give us the end we all want? Is this episode going to, close the show like it should? And as it turned out, the show did all of that and more. This episode was fantastic. I loved it. It perfectly ended everything. I really had no problems with it whatsoever. And it was by far the best episode of the season. And all my complaints, abysmal. Abysmal. This episode was fantastic. And yes, it was mostly dialogue driven, but that's because this episode was basically Jax's final day with everyone, and it was so sad to watch. But Charlie Hunnam in this episode, oh my god, amazing performance from him. I'm totally gonna miss his acting, and I'm actually gonna miss Sons of Anarchy, and I'm surprised that I'm actually gonna miss it because I didn't think I was going to, and I am. So let's just get to this episode because I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and honestly, out of every finale I've seen this year, best one by far. This was better than True Blood. Okay, it was. Jax, we get a montage of basically Jax's him getting ready, and he wakes up beside Wendy. Of course, they just had sex in the last episode. She's still sleeping. He looks over at her, then gets up quietly, puts on his rings, takes out a cardboard box that has some small journals in it. He adds two more to it, goes in to look on Abel, then holds Thomas and kisses the little boy. Tosses out his bloody sneakers. Of course, those are the ones he murdered Gemma in, so obviously he doesn't want to see those anymore. He puts on his riding boots, loads his gun, puts the journals into his backpack, grabs a bag and leaves. And in the garage, he looks through some photos of him growing up, his mom and more. And he finds the stuff that Gemma, where Gemma said it would be, his dad's manuscript, he burns the photos, manuscript, and all the journals. And basically, this whole episode, he's trying to clear his father's name. He's trying to basically conclude his father's legacy, do what his father did not get to do. And that's really what this whole episode's about. And I think it was a beautiful, beautiful ending. It very much reminded me of the ending of Breaking Bad, which I didn't watch the show a lot, but I watched the finale. It very much reminded me of that. So he gets on his bike and looks at the sun coming up. He goes into a burned out warehouse, looks around, then goes to put some deeds out of the file cabinets at the shop, looks at the bike under the tarp, rides to the cemetery to Opie's grave, lays his sun rings on top of it. I know that was a very hard death for a lot of people. I, of course, did not see Opie's death because I didn't watch Sons of Anarchy then, but I know that was one of the hardest, one of the biggest deaths of the entire show. So I didn't get to see that death, but that was a very well done scene. And then, of course, he goes to Tara's grave and kisses the headstone, leaves his wedding ring on top of the stone, and steps back from her grave and soaks in the early morning sun. And that's basically how the episode starts. And I thought that was just a beautiful way to start the episode. I mean, already you can tell this is going to be emotional. I mean, already I was kind of tearing up. So, Lila's setting a shot up for a porno she's directing when Jax comes in. Chibs is there having a smoke and finds Tio there too. They hug and he tells Jax he's good. Chibs says they're all set there. He tells Tio to hang out and says they'll let him know how it goes. Tig tells Tio to enjoy watching them shoot fat ass in the face. That was the name of the porno they're shooting. Little comedy there. Jax says they're all about poetry there, and Jax calls Lila a Fileni and says they've sold 3 more fat ass titles. Kisses her on the head. This is basically his final goodbye with Lila. Every time he has a scene in this episode, it's kind of like his final goodbye. He tells her he loves her. She says she loves him too. Jack says he wants to go out early and talk to Tyler to make sure he's moving on the Chinese. And to guess why, Henshin and Rowe are still in town. Chibs asks what happened at the forum, and he says he's thinking about their recommendations, and he tells them they'll know soon. He has to vote on Tio. He says he told Packer that it needs to be a charter by charter choice. He says they need it to land and says they agreed. And Chibs nominates Tio to get a patch, and Tig seconds. They all vote yes. And Rat asks what kind of name is Tadarius, and Quinn says to call him that and see what happens. They decide to go ahead and give him a full patch. Rat goes to Tio. He calls him Tadarius. Tio says not to call him that unless he came out of his damn womb. I thought that was really funny. Um, I'm gonna miss the comedy between the sons. I mean, that was one of the best parts of the season, is the comedy between the sons. They really are really funny, some of them. So they all look at him really serious. Then Jax asks, what if they call him Sam Crow? They pound the table. Tio breaks into a grin. Jax hands him his vest and tells him welcome and calls him brother. And it's a very well done scene because, they're Jax is leaving the club and they're now letting someone into the club, which I really love. And it was a very well done scene in my opinion. So Tio thanks him, says he knows this is a risk for them, and in my opinion, this is what they would have done if they wouldn't have killed off Juice. If Juice would have lived, this would have been Juice's scene. I kind of feel like that's what this was trying to show, is that if Juice wouldn't have died, this is basically what they would have done. And this is what I would have wanted to see it happen to Juice, but even though it happened to someone that wasn't Juice, I was fine with that because it was a very well done scene, and I definitely enjoyed seeing that. So, Tio thanks him. He says he knows there's a risk for them, the heat that will come, and Jack says change is good. They hug, and Chib says it can't get much hotter around here. They all get out with Tio as he joins them, and then Wendy hears a knock, goes to the door, and it's Nero. And she says they can head down after Abel gets out a half day. And he asks if Jax is there, and she says he came in at 4 and left before she woke up. He paces and asks if she knows where he is. She asks if everything is okay. He says he wanted to talk to him before they go. When he asks if he's heard from Gemma, and he says no. He asks if he can, they have no idea that Gemma died, so they have no idea that's happened. And that's one of the things I like about this episode, is that they don't know that Gemma died. They don't really focus on that, though. Yes, Jax is doing a lot of this because he just killed his mother, and that's kind of like wrapping it all up, but the others do not know that Gemma's dead. So I think it's very well done. So he asks him if he can help them get ready, and she has to pick up some snacks for the ride, and he leaves. And the guys meet Tyler and says Connor told him he'll be there at 10. He said he had some requests, and Tyler says he wants them to double the order. Tyler asks if Connor has a crew with him, and Jack says he should be alone and scared, and Tyler says they're locking down the streets now and should have done it by the end of the week. Jack says to let him know if they need help, and you get this final scene with Tyler, which I loved. Tyler is not a major character, but he still was very important in the show. Tyler said he's worried about August getting, he's worried about Marks getting out. Marks is finally getting out of jail. And Jack says they'll handle it, and Jack says Tyler to have his guys watch and call him as soon as Connor shows. They go to leave, but then Connor shows up and takes some pot shots at them. They duck the gunfire, then right after him. He barely misses a head on with a semi-truck. We'll talk about a truck in a second. We'll talk about a truck a little bit later. And the guys give chase. Connor curses when he comes up to something he can't avoid and has to take a sharp left, then takes him through a warehouse, hits a pallet, keeps going, breaks through a wood door, then into a warehouse of dolls that cries where he hits them, almost hits another semi, has to break through a gate, then barely misses a dump truck. The guys lay down their bikes to avoid hitting the truck, and Connor slips away from them. Now, there isn't a ton of action in this episode. A lot of it's just like final conversations, but this was a good action scene because it was well done in my opinion. I mean, there wasn't anything that was like it didn't need to be in there. It had to be in there. I mean, this is the final episode. I really can't complain when it's the final episode. It did what a final episode should do. It wrapped up the storylines. It did that well. Chibs curses and says Connor is digging a deeper hole. Jax tells Tig to call the clan and tell him that they need to talk to Connor's guy, Hugh. They pick up their bikes and go. Nero goes to the MC and bangs on Unser's trailer. Of course, he doesn't realize that Unser is dead. He doesn't realize that. And Chuck says Unser isn't back and neither is Gemma. Chuck asks if Gemma's okay, and Nero says he doesn't know what happened, and it's the truth. Chuck says the cops came looking, and Nero says he's going to look around the trailer, see if he can figure something out. He looks at the board where Unser was working on Tara's case and sits down. Her crime photos are up and it's awful. Jax is smoking on the roof at Redwoody when Chibs comes up, and he tells him to sit and offers him a smoke. And I love this scene because Jax and Chibs are like brothers. They really are. It's so sad to watch them. Any scene they have together, they're great in it, and the scene almost made me tear up. This was like the first scene. I mean, the first scene also had me tearing up, but this scene also had me tearing up. Every conversation in this episode almost had me tearing up. That's how good this episode was written. Chibs asks what's going on, and Jack says he needs to tell him some things he doesn't want to hear, but he needs him to listen. He says these are the best things for his club and the family. He says he came clean to Packer about Jerry and says they want a mayhem vote. And Jack says that's not going to happen. He tells him to just listen, but he's getting very upset. Rat shows up with D-Clan, and Tig tells them to go get a seat. Hugh looks a little worse for wear. Lila asks Tig what's going on. He tells her to call it a day. She says she has more to shoot, but he tells her tomorrow. She asks if Jax is okay. Tig says they're all good and kisses her cheek. Tig comes up and tells Jax the Irish are there. He says it's just D-Clan and one soldier. Jax says to bring them all up. He goes back over, pats Chibs on the shoulder, and says this is how he learns to be a leader, doing the shit that hurts the most you'd rather someone else do. And that is a very important line because this whole episode Jax is doing all of this. He's ending things just to protect the club and to protect everyone and make everyone's lives better. That's really what he's trying to do here. So he says that's how you earn respect. He asks for Chibs' word that he'll do as Jax said. He gives it, and Chibs is near tears, and Jax comforts him. I'm near tears as well at this point. The Irish come back with Tig, and Jack says Chibs if he's ready for this. He says always. He says the clan appreciates the help. They tell Hugh they need his help getting Connor. He tells Hugh to call Connor and tell him he got away from the Kings. Hugh says he won't walk into a trap, and Jack says Connor will show up. Jack shoots the clan and the soldier and tells Hugh to send Connor a photo of them. Tells Chibs to let Rourke know what they did. And then we see Althea. She's at her office going through files when the DA show up, and we see the return of Patterson, finally. Patterson has been gone since, like, episode 2. She was the one, of course, Patterson was the one who told Unser to continue being a police officer and things like that. And he tells Althea to sit and asks about Tara's murder. Althea says their suspect was out of state and now Juice is dead. And Althea also says that Gemma's missing. And Patterson asks if she knows why Jax wants to see her. She says, she has no idea that he killed Gemma. She has no idea about this. So she has no idea what's going on here. So she says he called the doctor this afternoon. Althea says it may have something to do with his mother. Patterson tells her to put out an APB on Gemma. Of course, they can't put an APB on Gemma because that Gemma's dead. Patterson asks about Unser, and Althea says he's been very helpful. She tells Althea that policing streets owned by outlaws is complicated. She knows she walked into a bloodbath. And there was a moment where I actually thought Althea was going to die. I kind of did. I don't know why. I kind of felt like there was a moment where she was going to die. But Patterson tells her to hang in and says that she thinks he's the right person for the job. Althea smiles but then looks worried. Hugh sits smoking when Connor pulls up. He tells Connor it's just him and tells him to come in and shut the door. He does. Jackson the guys walk in the other door and Hugh points a gun at his face. He tells Connor to listen to him. And it's another really intense scene. Connor says it's between him and the Kings, and Jack says he's selling guns behind the King's back. They ask who he was selling it to. Connor says Salvadorians in Nevada and some Chinese and Russians up north. Excuse me. Jack asks if he can get AKs and Glocks, and he confirms. Rourke comes in, and then he asks where D-Clan is. Jack says he's dead, and then shoots Rourke and the people with him. This is not the first, Jax kills a lot more people later, but that's basically what happens there. So, Jax pulls up to the MC, says he and Wendy are leaving soon. Jax asks Chucky to give them a minute. Chucky says he put the plates on his dad's bike. He leaves with him with Nero, and Jax tells Nero he needs him to handle some business for him. And Nero asks what it is. Jax has it all in the folder. He says he's giving Wendy the garage and the houses. He's basically gonna, he wants her to sell it all, take the money, set her and the kids up somewhere else. He wants her to basically be the mother that she never got to be, which I love. I love that he is doing this for Wendy because Wendy really does deserve it. She's really is a great mother. She's been a great mother to Abel. She's been the mother figure in his life, and she really has been a great mother figure to him. And it was just amazingly well done. The way this was done was so well done. And he says Elias caught up to all of them. And basically, wait, where was I? Nero asks what he's doing, and Jack shows him it's what he should have done when his wife was still alive. He says his piece of Redwoody and Dioza go to the MC. He tells him to buy scoops and use it as an HQ. He puts the folder on a cabinet for Nero. He asks Jax where he's going to be. Jack says he's leaving. I love this scene. It really much reminded me of Breaking Bad when Walter White revealed why he was doing the crystal meth and why he was doing everything he was doing. It very much reminded me of that, and I think the scene was very well done because of that. basically Jax tells him he's sorry, but that he did what he knew how to do, and that Gemma knew what he had to be done. And, basically he tells Nero that he killed Gemma, and Nero, of course, is kind of upset, but he understands why. And he says the lies cut up to all of them. He said he tried to hide it from it, make it legit, run away from all of it. And I love what he says here. He says, "This is who I am, and I can't change it." And I love that he says that because he realizes that he can't change it. He's always going to be this way, and there's nothing he can do about that. And I love that Jax realized that, because that's something they need to realize. I mean, Jax couldn't keep realizing that, Jax couldn't keep thinking that he could change, because he really can't. When you're a certain type of person, and especially someone like Jax, you can't change who you are. You just can't. Especially when you've been a certain way for so long. You just can't change it. Okay? There are certain things that we have to accept that we can't change. And I like that this scene really showed that. So basically, he says, Nero tries to get his face straightened, and he asks Jax where he's going to go. He says he's not sure. We have no idea what Jax's plan is at this point. He asks what he should tell Wendy, and Jax says to tell her everything. He says when the time comes, she needs to tell his sons who he really is, and that he's not a good man, but a criminal and a killer. He says he needs his son to grow up hating the thought of him. And I like that we saw this, because it's showing that he doesn't want Abel to become the man he was. We've seen a lot of hints at Abel becoming who Jax is, and Jax does not want this to happen to Abel. He wants Abel to not become who he was, and I like that Jax, doesn't want that. So, speaking of Abel, he then gets his final scene with Abel, and I about lost it here. I was like this close to crying. I was like a wreck here. Abel calls out for Jax. He steps outside. Abel runs to me, picks him up, and hugs him. Wendy has Thomas and asks what's going on. He says they're just reminiscing. He takes Thomas and holds him. He tells Abel to be good for Wendy. And Abel asks if he means Wendy, and Jax says it's okay to call, he wants him to call her mommy, basically. And I love that moment, because, of course, that's what she really is. Wendy is his mother. Tara's not his mother. Wendy's his real mother, and I love that he finally said that. So, he says Wendy would like it and would probably give him some more candy. He tells Abel to listen to Nero. He says he's his father's best friend, and what he says goes. He's Jax's best friend, and he tells him to have fun and enjoy all the animals. Jax tears up a little and whispers to, he's tearing up. He knows that this is going to be the final time that he's going to see Abel, so obviously he's crying. He hugs Abel again. Abel tells him he loves him. He squeezes him and tells him he loves him. Nero grabs him up and says to come on, and straps him into the car. And when he asks Jax what happened, he says everything is going to be fine. He tells her she's a good mom. He kisses her, tells her he loves her. And Nero says they need to do, and when he puts Thomas in the car so they can go, when he asks Nero if he's going to tell her what's going on, he says he will, but not now. Jax watches them drive away, and they're basically going to start their life together. Do what they need. They're going to provide for Abel and Thomas what Jax would have done. And I think it's amazing what they're showing. It's great what it's showing, and it was really sad, but it was very well done in my opinion. So he checks out his dad's bike, then starts it, climbs on it, shakes Chucky's hand, tells him to take care. Chucky says bye. He rides off, and Chibs meets Althea. And let me say this, I haven't really been caring about their relationship, but it does matter because this is a series finale. So if you start a plot, you have to conclude it. That's just the way a series finale goes, and this was no exception, and I like this, definitely. He asks if that's it. She tells him they're done, and basically she tells him, look, we're done, and he asks if she's playing that tune again. She says no more payouts or sex. She says he's an outlaw and she's a cop. He steps closer, says that's a mistake. She asks if it's because he has feelings for her. He says no. He says cops that lay on the wrong side of them tend to go away. She asks if he's threatening her, but he says he doesn't have to. History speaks for itself. And I'm glad that they decide just to end things, because that's what they need to do. They do need to end things, so I'm happy that happened. So then we get an amazing scene here. I thought this was great. We actually get to see Chibs be the new leader of the Sons, which is something that we need to see. Chibs says to bring them all to the table for the vote so they can tell them all what's going on. Chibs asks if they're really doing this. Chibs says they have to. He, to get right, and he says he will, and then he's there for Chibs, and Jack shows up to see Patterson. He thanks her for taking the meeting. She says he's been busy judging by all the violence in Oakland. He thanks her for trying to help Tara, and she says if he could cooperate and tell her what he knows about the murder, and he says he'll give her everything, and says she may want to record it since he didn't have time to write it down. She starts a recording, says the names of the charter as Redwood, and this is just a great scene because, I mean, Patterson has no idea what's going on, and she had no idea he was going to meet up with her, and I just thought this was great. He tells her it wasn't the Chinese that killed his wife. He says it wasn't anyone outside the club. He says it was his mother. Sorry, that was Skype. Let me just go offline. Um, okay, let me just go offline on Skype. Okay. He says he'll give her everything. Says she may want to record it since he didn't have time to write it down. She starts recording. Says the name of the charter is Redwood. He corrects her and says Redwood Original. He tells her it wasn't the Chinese, and he says it was his mother. She's completely stunned. She had no idea this was a possibility. He says Gemma Teller killed her in a fit of rage, and then Juice killed Eli to protect Gemma. She's freaking out. She has no idea about any of this information. She asks about Lynn and the others. He tells her to turn off the recording. She does and shows him it's not recording, then puts the phone away. He says Gemma and Juice made up the Chinese stuff to set him on fire. She asks what happens when the street finds out. He says everyone involved has moved on or is gone. And I like that he's realizing that he went too far. I like that Jax is realizing this. I like that he's not like, oh, I like that he's like, oh, I regret nothing. He does regret what he did because he did go too far. He did. He went too far. Even if Jax doesn't want to admit it, he definitely did go too far. So, basically, she asks why at the end of the day, but he won't tell her. He thanks her and says, basically, he says, War on the Streets will be done by the end of the day. And that makes sense at the end of the episode. She asks again what happens at the end of the day. He says the bad guys, and I love this line. She says what happens at the end of the day, and all he says is the bad guys lose, and he leaves her office, and that's done. So he's gotten that done. So there's more stuff to get done, but he's gotten that done. So then we see the guys are all around the table. Jibbs is telling them it has to happen, and this is what the charter needs to do. He says they can't let their hearts be louder than their reason. He says all those in favor and calls for a vote. The guys are all stunned and sit. He asks again for all those in favor of Jax meeting Mr. Mayhem. Quinn votes yes, then Montage. Brad hesitates, and Tig puts a hand on his shoulder. He votes yes, and Tig does too, then Happy. Jibbs is near tears, struggling to talk. He also votes yes, and then taps the gavel and says Jax meets Mr. Mayhem, which basically means that Jax is going to die. That's what that means. So, it was a very hard scene to watch, but we all knew it was going to happen. We all knew that Jax was going to die. I mean, this whole episode, he's saying goodbye to people. We knew it. He gets off the bike in front of Bearski's place. He asks Jax what he can do for him, and he kills him. Which makes sense, because, I mean, Bearski lied to them. He was using them. He was the rat, and Jax killed him. I mean, he needed to get that done, so it makes sense why he killed him, because he had to do it. He had to, if he wanted to get, things done, that's what he had to get done. So, Unser and Gemma's bodies are found. There are cops and crime scenes, techs swarming her dad's house, gathering evidence and taking photos. Jack sets off his bike at a courthouse. He walks around back and finds a homeless woman with her stroller, and it's the one that Gemma saw at the truck stop, which I thought was interesting. He asks who she is, and she smiles and hands him her blanket. She says it's time, takes her stroller out of crap, and leaves. He watches her go, and August is walking out of the courthouse, and there's Marks, and Jax kills Marks. So, Marks is dead, but I'm not shocked because we knew that was going to happen. We knew that Jax was going to kill Marks. I'm not shocked at all he did it. Marks deserved it, and I'm happy he did it. So, and then we get the scene that really just made me cry. I was crying so much in the scene. I was a wreck here. He comes back to the warehouse, parks his bike, takes off his gloves, goes inside. The guys are all waiting, takes off his vest, lays it down, lays down his gun, rips off his president patch. He cuts Chib's VP patch off. Chib sighs, he looks at Tig and then hands him the VP patch. Tig is now going to be the vice president. He tells him it's a good choice. He tells Chibs it's his charter now, calls him brother. They hug, Jax kisses his cheek, puts his vest back but leaves the gun. He tells them he's ready. Tig takes Jax by the arm. They walk him over. He picks up the gun, turns to face Jax, and I was pretty sure they were just going to shoot Jax right there, but I'm thinking we still have like a half an hour left. So he shoots Happy's arm instead, and Chib says he'll tell Packer you laid down some fire and got away. And basically that's their plan. So Jack says he would never put this burn on them. Tig says he knows it. He tells him he loves them all. They each hug in turn. He hugs Happy awkwardly since he's been shot. He cries on Jax's shoulder. Jax kisses him on the head. He hugs Tig tight. Tig tells him he has no words. And he turns to Chibs. They clap hands, then hug tightly. Chib tells him that he'll make him proud, and Jax nods. They open the warehouse door. He gets on his dad's bike, puts in his helmet, and tells him, I got this. And it's a beautiful scene. It's his goodbye to, I mean, I've said this before, the sons are his family. They're his brothers. They're the people that he cares about the most. He's relied on them the most. He's been there for them. He really has been their president. You know, he's been their brother. They've been his brothers, and he's never going to forget them. And saying goodbye to them is like saying goodbye to family members. It really is that sad. I mean, that was by far the hardest goodbye out of all of them. And I knew like what was coming after it, but like that was just so hard to watch. So Althea then gets a call, tells her guys to go put an APB on Jax for multiple homicides, you know, and they do. And you can tell that it's about to get crazy. Jax drives on the road outside of town, stops at the spot where his dad died, and he talks to his dad, which makes sense because this whole episode, what is he trying to do? He's trying to avenge his father's death. It makes sense why he's doing this because what is he doing? Trying to avenge his father's, you know, not trying to avenge his father's death. What did I just say? He's trying to make up for all the damage and basically close out what his father did and end his father's legacy. So he tells him, you know, he tells him all the stuff he wanted for Sam Crow and what they eventually became. And he said it's hard to get right with both family and Patch. He says the fear and guilt crippled him. He says a good outlaw and good father can't live in the same man. A cop car drives by, then pulls to a stop. He tells JT he's sorry. He says too late for him. The car turns around, comes back. He tells him Gemma had plans, but says it's too late. It's not too late for him. He says they will never know this life of chaos. The cop calls back, and as Jax tells his dead dad, he says, I know who you are now and what you did. He tells his dad he loves him, puts out a cigarette, cranks his bike, and then we get to the final montage in Sons of Anarchy history. And this is by far the best montage they've ever done because the anticipation of this montage, you know something's going to happen. It's just like, this is when it's hitting you. It's like, oh my gosh, the final episode. I'm going to be honest, guys, it really wasn't hitting me that was the final episode till that scene with the Sons. And it's really like, oh my god, it's really over. It's going to be over in a few minutes. I mean, what's going to happen in a few minutes is going to change the entire show. So it's really going to be the end. So the cop flies a siren, gets out, tells Jax to get off the bike. Jax turns, fires at him. The second he does that, you know Jax is dead. You know it. The second he does that, I'm like, he's dead. There's no questioning. He is dead. Drives off. The cop gets back in his car, gives chase. Nero and Wendy are on the road to Norco with the kids. You know, they're going to that farm. And Nero looks at sad. Wendy takes her hand. She squeezes it. Jack smokes some rise with a little smile on his face as the cop car chases him with sirens and lights on. He's smiling because he's happy with what he's doing. He's satisfied. He's basically everything he's doing is for the good of everyone else. And I love that Jax is doing that. And, you know, he really is helping out the guys with doing a favor with this. He's closing out all the problems of what they've done. And the guys all sit around with Woody looking glum, drinking and smoking. Tig goes to Venus for comfort. He knows what's going to happen to Jax. He sits on the floor with his head on her lap. He strokes his head. He knows he's never going to see Jax again. And you can see that they're going to stay together. Jax drives on as more cars join the chase. Patterson meets Althea at Bereski's place. She sees he was all shot up and is dead. Patterson takes this all in, walks back outside. She really sees, you know, how far Jax is willing to go. And Jax rides on until he hits West 580. He's got 2 motorcycle cops and a half dozen police cars trailing him. Chip sits alone at the table holding his new patch, sitting in Jax's chair, now his, which is now his. And I love his reaction. At first he's like upset, but you can see that he's proud of, you know, Jax would be proud of him for what he's doing, and he knows that. And he has no idea what's going on with Jax right now. So Gemma's body is carried in a body bag to a stretcher. They tag her with a paper, then zip her up. You know, they basically go autopsy. Thomas yawns and Abel colors in the car. Wendy has fallen asleep. Abel twists JT's rings his grandma gave him in his little finger. And I think that's trying to set up that Abel's going to become a part of the Sons. You know, he's going to do it. You know, Jax followed his father. Abel's going to follow Jax. And that's not a surprise. I thought we were going to get post-credit scene, but we didn't. I'm happy the way it ended. A semi turns about onto 580. Jax now has 4 bikes and 10 cars on him. He still rides a black crow. This crow, by the way, guys, is a very important part of the scene. It actually foreshadows something. And the song that was playing in this episode, by the way, beautiful song. I want to get that song on iTunes. It's amazing to listen to. It was 7 minutes long, but I did not care. The song was amazing. We see the chase from above. The number of cars and bikes following has reached epic proportions. He's got a lead on them for a couple of hundred feet. Like, he means business here. He is going to... You can tell what he's going to do. He looks back and then sees the oncoming truck. It's driven by Milo, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care that there's an oncoming truck. And second he did that, I'm like, I know what he's going to do. He's going to kill himself. You can just tell it. He's going to do that. So he smiles his bike, lets go of the bike handles, drifts into the path of the truck, and he kills himself. So he kills himself. He's going to be in hell with his father. He goes off with a smile on his face. 2 crows perch on the side of the road and fly off as a pool of blood sleeps over toward them. And that's basically it. And honestly, guys, I could not be happier. That was the perfect finale, in my opinion. And honestly, guys, there really was no other way to end it than for Jax to die. Jax really did everything he could for the club. He helped them out. He made them better. He got them out of certain problems. He got them out of certain situations they could have been in. And honestly, just, oh my god, the writing in this episode was fantastic. The directing was fantastic. The way they wrote the final scenes, the way this episode played with my emotions, just everything about this episode was absolutely fantastic. I loved everything that was going on here. Let's talk about Sons of Anarchy in general. Yes, the season had tons of problems. The first half of the season was not very good. I was not very into it. But these last, 4 episodes have been amazing. Even last week's. Last week's I was not that fond of. Looking back, was a very good episode. And every episode, since episode 10, every episode has been amazing. Perfect way to close it. I actually am going to miss this show, which I'm surprised about. I didn't think I was going to, but I am going to miss it. I mean, that final scene really shows me how much I'm going to miss the show. I'm very happy I started watching the show. I know a lot of you were like, why did you start watching the show in the final season? Because I wanted to see how the show would end, and now I know how, and I'm happy it did. Let me know what you guys think of the ending, but, I mean, that's really it, guys. Sons of Anarchy's over. There's no more Sons of Anarchy or anything. I know Anarchy Afterward is going on right now. I'm not watching it because I wanted to do this review for you guys. And that's basically it. I'm not going to do Sons of Anarchy anymore. And now we just have to wait for Justified to come back, because now Justified has their final season. And now I'm gonna get upset because Justified's ending. But was this a good final season? It had a lot of problems. It should have been 10 episodes, but this was the perfect finale. But that's basically for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this finale. I thought this was just an amazing, amazing finale. Perfect way to end this show. Just everything was perfect. I really had no problems with it at all. That's it for my review, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this finale. It really just hit me, guys. I could not believe that it's over. I just can't. But I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for the mid-season finale, Veins of Shields, and that's really it. Alright, bye guys, and never, ever forget Sons of Anarchy. Never forget it. I'm going to miss the montages. I'm going to miss the mayhem. I'm going to miss the characters. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to miss about the show. And again, let me know what you guys saw this finale. I'll see you guys next video. Okay, bye.